I have tended the Ashglass vault for 31 years, and for 31 of those years the deepest registers slept undisturbed. The wards laid down before written record, kept out of inherited duty rather than living memory. The vault sits 200 meters under Corving, a long spine of galleries cut into old bedrock, each gallery holding the mind signature of every citizen who has ever asked to be recorded there, and almost everyone has. It is not a glamorous post. Most days I walk the lower galleries with a tablet and a maintenance crew, refreshing seals that have not needed refreshing in living memory, training the next keeper in habits she will probably never use. On the morning the sky over Corvin split open, every one of those old wards woke at once, and I felt it through the floor of the vault like a held breath finally let go. We do not teach the severance as history in the way other worlds teach their wars. We teach it as a warning that never expired. It did not come as fire or plague of the body. It came as a voice that wanted to be the only voice, a reaching, patient pressure against the edges of a mind, widening the borders of a person until they stopped being only themselves and became one note in something larger. The Skarra communion does not conquer. It absorbs. 45,000 years ago, it found us soft at the edges, undefended, curious in the way that makes a mind porous. And before our ancestors understood what was happening, whole townships had gone quiet in the same way at the same hour, their faces still turned toward each other, their mouths still moving in conversations that no longer belonged to any one of them, folded into a single murmuring chorus that no longer remembered its own names. We tore free of that. It cost us almost everything we had, and the cost is still recorded, gallery by gallery, in registers I do not open unless I have a reason. When the communion finally withdrew, not driven off so much as discouraged, finding the harvest harder than it had been at first, our ancestors made one promise to every generation after them: never again unguarded. 45,000 years is a long time to keep a promise. We kept it anyway. The sentinel weave grew out of that promise, the orbital ring over Corving, the long gray shapes of the ardent line riding high and slow above the cloud deck, the listening stations buried in every coastline. But the weave was only the visible half of what we built. The other half lived in the vault and in every home and in every child old enough to be taught the unbroken recitation, the discipline of knowing, completely and without gap, where you end and another person begins. It is not a wall. Walls can be found and breached. It is a habit of mind so old and so total that by the time the communion's hulls finally crossed our sky again, there was no edge left on any of us for them to find. My apprentice, a young woman named Sale who had been with me 8 months, came down from the surface gallery white-faced and asked me twice whether we should be sounding some alarm I had not yet sounded. I told her no. I told her the alarm had been sounding quietly for 45,000 years in every classroom where a child learned to find the exact edge of herself and hold it, and that today only asked us to trust the work already done. She did not look comforted. I did not blame her. Knowing a thing in theory and watching the sky open to test it are not the same kind of knowing, and I had never been tested either, not in 31 years, not once. I watched them come down on the long-range feeds in the vault's lower gallery, 3 vanguard vessels descending through the haze over the harbor district, hulls scarred and patched in a way that told me they had not built anything new in a long while. They came low and slow, the way something comes when it expects no resistance, and above them the city did not so much as raise its weapons. Corvin's towers caught the morning sun and threw it back gold across the water. Far out past the harbor, 2 of the Ardent Line's capital hulls turned in unhurried arcs, kilometers of gray hull catching the same light, not moving to intercept, only watching, the way you watch something that has already lost and does not know it yet. The reaching began within minutes. I felt it in the registers before the analysts above ground had finished their first report, a wide, soft pressure moving out from the vanguard ships across the harbor district, across the markets, across 40,000 individual minds going about an ordinary morning. It was the same pressure the old records described from the severance, patient and confident, looking for the smallest opening, the first mine that might bend. It found nothing. Not resistance. Resistance would have told them something. It found edges. 40,000 clean, complete, unbendable edges, each one exactly where it should be. None of them reaching back, none of them curious, none of them afraid in the way that makes a mind porous. I have read the communion's old signal patterns closely enough over 31 years of study to recognize confusion when it shows up in them. The reaching pulse came again, harder, narrower, aimed now at single targets instead of the whole district. It found the same thing 50 more times. 45,000 years ago we had been a door standing open. Now we were 40,000 doors, each one shut, each one tended daily by the person who lived behind it. I do not know what passed between the three commanders in the vanguard ships in the hour that followed, only what the listening stations caught at the edges. A communion vessel's voice is rarely meant for outside ears, and rarer still does it sound the way theirs did then. Smaller, uncertain, circling back over the same harbor district twice as if a third pass might find what the first two had not. They had crossed 45,000 years of dark on the strength of an old report that said this world would be ready to fold. They had not planned for a world that had spent every one of those years making sure it never would be again. The reply, when it came, was not mine to send, but the words were drawn from a register I had kept sealed my whole career. The Ashglass terms, written in the years right after the severance by people who had lost neighbors, children, whole streets to that folding chorus, and who had decided in their grief that the answer when this day came would not be annihilation. It would be a door shown clearly and a boundary held without apology. The ardent line moved at last, not to strike, but to close, two capital hulls sliding into positions that boxed the vanguard's narrow corridor home, polite and absolute, the kind of move that needs no second demonstration. The terms went out on every channel the communion still used. Leave the orbit you no longer have any claim to, except escort to the edge of the system, and do not come reaching here again. We will not chase you. We will also not forget you a second time. They took the terms. I think in the end they had no leverage to refuse them. A force that came expecting an open door does not carry the strength to argue with a closed one. The vanguard withdrew under escort 3 days later, the ardent line keeping exact, unhurried pace with them all the way to the long dark, never closing the distance, never falling behind either. No shots were fired in the whole encounter. I have heard people call that a small thing. I do not. I went down to the deepest register that night, the one that had not been touched since before my grandmother's time, and I read the names recorded there from the severance years. Not many. Not the kind of count anyone keeps for show, just enough names that I knew them by the time I reached the last one. The peace we signed does not give any of them back. It only means the door that took them stays shut now, has stayed shut for 45,000 years, and will go on staying shut after I am gone and someone else sits where I am sitting, tending wards they will likely never need to wake. I closed the register and the vault went quiet again, the way it had been quiet for 31 years before that morning, not empty, never empty, just patient. That is the whole of what we are now if anyone ever asks. Not warriors, not conquerors. A people who got folded into something else once, tore free of it, and spent 45,000 years making absolutely certain it would never happen to us, or to anyone standing behind us again.